If you're selling your house in San Diego, how much does it actually cost? Obviously, you have the sales price of your home, but there's some other costs involved with selling your home, from real estate agents to title to escrow, plus a few other things you might want to take into account. So if you are potentially going to sell your home in the future, stay tuned. We're going to jump into an actual closing statement so you can see all the costs involved with selling your house. And as always, it really depends on your specific situation. So a few things that were not on this closing statement, I'm going to cover at the end. It might show up on yours depending on where you're living. But if you want to reach out, pick our brains, you're thinking about making a move, you want an estimated net sheet to see what you're actually going to walk away with if you do sell your home, feel free to reach out. All of our contact info is in the first link in the description right below. Call, text, email, whatever's easiest for you. We got your back when making the move here in San Diego. I'm Chris Erickson with the Beach Life Group. Let's get into it. All right, so let's jump into the statement. So anything on the credit side is going to the seller. Anything on the debit side is one of the costs that they did have. The $880,000 was the sales price. Now, the first thing in the debit aisle is a seller credit. This is something that was negotiated between the buyer and the seller. The buyer requested some repairs. Instead of performing those repairs, now the seller did do a few of the repairs, but then there was some things that they would just rather give the buyer a credit for to take care of themselves. So in this situation, they decided to credit the buyer, basically giving the buyer $2,405 to take care of the stuff that they requested. As a seller, there's a few different ways to go through a request for repairs. We get that covered in a different video. But as far as this situation goes, the seller did decide to credit the buyer $2,405. So prorations and adjustments in this situation, the seller got back to about $242 from county taxes, basically prepaid to escrow prior. Now, the difference between when they closed and when the actual property taxes were due, the seller got back $242. This number will vary, obviously, depending on the closing date. And now for property taxes in San Diego, they are due in November and in February. So depending on when you close your home, this will depend on how much of the property taxes you put into escrow or get back from escrow at the end. Next up, you will see a county transfer tax to the San Diego County Recording Office. Every property is going to have this, and it's calculated at 55 cents per every $500 of the purchase price. So if you take the 880,000, you divide that by 500 and then times that by 0.55 or 55 cents, you're going to get $968. So as you can see, a lot of the numbers that we're going to come up to right now really depend on the purchase price of the home, so they can vary. But as with any client, as we're going through just the initial conversations of selling price, of what they're thinking to sell their house for, we could give them different net sheets, estimated net sheets, before you even put your home on the market. So we can go through all these numbers prior to even putting the home on the market to give you a good idea. Now, it's going to change, like I said, depending on dates, depending on a few other items. The credits, the seller credits can change, but it gives you a good idea of what you can walk away with at the end. And we call it a net sheet here. And usually we run it for a few different scenarios. Next up is the commissions. And this is top one's going to the listing agent. The bottom one's going to the buyer's agent, the person who brought the buyer. And in this case, each one is 2.5% of the sales price, or a total of 5%. Now, as you're talking with your real estate agent, all these numbers are negotiable. Everybody has different services that they offer, different programs that they might offer as far as what their fees are. But yes, these are all negotiable between you and the real estate agent. All right, next up is a title policy, an owner's title policy. Now, the buyer pays one as well, but this one is paid by the seller. And its title fees are going to cover the cost of title search and title transfer. So when you sell your home, you have to transfer the legal ownership of the property to the buyer. So to ensure there's no claims or liens on your home, your settlement agent, your title rep will complete the title search. Now, this fee is calculated using usually a base fee, and then depending on the purchase price of the home. So in this case, it was about $2,400. Next up, if you've heard the term escrow, escrow does charge for their services. This is going to include a lot of the paperwork. They're going to contact you and coordinate a lot of the signings, and they'll send notaries out and just take care of a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that needs to be taken care of during the whole process. They have their base fee. Once again, it is a base fee, and then it usually is a premium on top of that, depending on what the purchase price of the home may be. And then you'll see escrow processing fee. So it's another fee, obviously, from escrow. But if the home has any sort of trustees, then all that is extra work for the escrow company. So depending on how involved that is, you'll usually see a processing fee on this part as well. And like I said, it's on top of the normal escrow fees. And at the bottom, just $20 for overnight. They're sending stuff to you. If whatever, there might be a few extra fees in there depending on just how many things happen during the transaction. Now, this one here is only for for sellers who do not reside in the property as their primary residence. So in California, this is an amount that they're going to hold 3.33%. Escrow is going to hold it and send it to California Franchise Board, and you'll settle it out at the end of the year when you do your taxes. So it's not necessarily money that is gone. They're holding it depending on what your tax situation is. Maybe you'll get a portion of that back. Maybe you'll owe more, but this is one of the holding places. Now, there's another way to calculate it as well. It just really depends on what is the best situation for you. Is it 3.33%? Or the other way I believe it's calculated is 12.3% of the gains on the property. So depending on what you purchase a home to what you actually made on the home to what you're walking away with, depending on the purchase price of the home. That is another way to calculate it. Once again, chat with your CPA, see what is the best situation for you, and then you communicate that to escrow in this process. In this situation, they decided to go with the 3.33% to the franchise tax board. Next up here is a septic certification. So if you own a home and you are on a septic system, once again, a lot of situations here in San Diego, depending on where you're living, that do have septic systems, but there is a certification required to transfer the property. So sometimes they'll come out and they'll check it out and they'll just give you the certification. Everything will be good. You'll pay a fee. In this case, it was a little bit more. They had to get a little bit of work done to make sure that the septic system could get certified. So that's where you see the $3,400 mark here. This could be less, it could be more. It really depends on the septic system. And if you just are connected to city sewer, this is not going to be showing up on your closing statement. Next up is a NHD report. This is included in most transactions, and it's a natural hazard disclosure. It's about $100, as you can see here. So not too significant, but you're providing it to the buyer, and it lets them know if there's any, if they're in any high risk zones, high flood zones, high fire zones, earthquake zones, etc. It's a full report that breaks that down, provided by, in this case, Snap NHD, but there's different providers out there, but runs around right around $100. Now, here's the initial debit that escrow did hold on to for the first half 2023 county taxes of $513. So it really just depends on when you are selling your home. You'll see tax prorated taxes on most of these closing statements. So at the end, the total was $82,471. Cash to seller is $797,771. So one thing you didn't see on this one that you might see on yours, especially if you have a loan, well, definitely if you have a loan, is the loan payoff. So that amount would go in there as well. And obviously that would get taken off the amount that you get as the seller. So in this case, if you had a loan on this property of $400,000, that would get taken off, and then you'd be left with $397,000. Another thing you did not see on here that could potentially be on your property if you are an HOA is HOA docs. So depending on who the property management company is, it can be significant, anywhere maybe even up to $1,000 to get all the HOA docs ordered and delivered to the buyer, including CC&Rs, all the financial stuff. It's just a big packet that goes over to the buyers. So a lot of times you will see that on there as well. And then a few other costs that aren't on this statement. And so if you want to get that conversation started, feel free to reach out. I'm Chris Erickson with the Beach Life Group, and all of our information is right down below in the description. As always, we got your back when making the move here in San Diego.